Priority 1 message from Starfleet coming in on secured channel.
You are listening to the TrekRanks podcast, a member of the Tricorder Transmissions Podcast Network. This is episode 77, featuring the top 5 WTF moments. Welcome, Star Trek fans. I am Jim Moorhouse. I am the host of the TrekRanks podcast, and tonight we're doing a unique topic. It's our top 5 WTF moments, which of course stands for What the F moments. That's F as in fuck. So we don't usually swear on TrekRanks, and even though I like to swear like a Nausicaan in real life, if I'm being honest. But so there might be a few more bleeps in this week's episode coming up. You just heard 2, and here's another one. What the fuck? Okay. We're going to get into what the fuck moments means in a minute, but we've got 2 great guests. They're podcasters over on the Trek FM network on the great podcast Primitive Culture Through the Years. And returning for his second appearance is Mr. Duncan Barrett. Duncan, are you there?
I am. Hi, Jim. How are you?
I am good. Author and podcaster. We'll let you plug your book later, Duncan.
That's very kind of you.
And joining us, the other member of Primitive Culture for a long time. By the way, it's a great podcast. I love it. One of my favorites because it's smart. Makes me feel smart when I listen to it. It is Clara Cook. Clara, are you there?
I am. Hello, Jim. How are you?
I am good. I got to meet both you guys in person at Destination London in 2018. So that was awesome. And Duncan's been on the show once.
Birmingham, not London.
Oh yeah, that's right. I went to London before that.
I know to you guys, it's like it's all one place. But
in LA, the distance to Birmingham is like a suburb. So
yeah, probably. Yeah,
it's all the same. All right, let's get into our TrekRanks. Oh, no, before we do that, we got to ask Clara her Trek origin story because it's her first time coming on. So, Clara, tell us a little bit about your background in Trek, and have you seen it all? How did you get into Star Trek?
I have seen all Star Trek except for the most recent Picard episode, which I believe people in the US get first before people in the UK. I started watching Star Trek when I was about 4 years old. It was the original series. And I remember being very enamored with Mr. Spock. Mr. Spock was my favorite character, and he was my favorite character throughout most of my childhood until I started watching DS9. And then I just fell in love with the character of Clara, who became my second favorite character. And I watched all the movies. I remember a very dramatic incident when I was about 8 years old. In a little tiny cottage in Wales when it was very, very cold and rainy outside on a holiday, watching The Wrath of Khan for the first time and sobbing at the end of it and being like, Spock is dead. And my mum being like, it's all right, don't worry. He comes back in the next movie.
That's awesome. Well, I love that so Spock and Kira, your top 2 characters, they are number 3 and 4 for me on TrekRanks character rank. So we've got that in common. I love them. All right, let's get into our TrekRanks recalibration and get into this topic.
What are you recalibrating?
Everything. It's a sweeping, a recalibration of all systems.
As regular listeners will know by now, general order number 1 here at the TrekRanks podcast is that we love Trek and we love to rank Trek via some deep dive topics just to get the conversation started, because my favorite thing to do is to talk about Star Trek, and it's not about the ranks. It's just about highlighting things that we love about Star Trek.
But what is that Vulcan motto? Infinite diversity.
In infinite combinations.
And what is diversity? A celebration of differences.
And as Paul and Dr. Phlox just said, TrekRanks is basically just a big old celebration of differences. There are no wrong answers here at TrekRanks. We love it all, from TOS to TNG, straight through to Enterprise and the Kelvin timeline, and Discovery and Short Treks, and now Picard as well. Amazing that we have another new series.
Black alert. Black alert.
And a reminder that this episode of TrekRanks is current through Discovery Season 2, the entirety of the new Season 2 Short Treks, and now the first 4 episodes of Star Trek Picard.
What is the nature of your psychiatric emergency?
Oh, that was a new alert we had there from our emergency medical hologram on La Serena, captained by Mr. Cristobal Rios. And this is just a warning to everybody that we are actually at the end of this episode, we're going to add a little WTF bonus content based on what we saw in the amazing Star Trek Picard episode, Stardust City Rag, that just dropped a little bit after we recorded this episode. So stay tuned for that at the very end of this podcast. So potential spoilers are in play for all those. And one final reminder that we use episodes as a shorthand, but the 13 films are always in play as well.
Open hailing frequencies. Hailing frequencies open. I'm viewer.
And you can find TrekRanks on the net access interface links at TrekRanks.com. And you can contact me directly on Twitter at TrekRanks or at Enterprise Extra. You can also call and leave us a message with your own picks at 609-512-LLAP. That's 609-512-5527. Or you can always just record your own picks and then send me a link via DM on Twitter. Okay, to wrap it up, Duncan and Clara, why don't you guys let everybody know how they can get a hold of you on the net access interface? Duncan.
You can find me on Twitter. I'm at Barrett's Books. That's Barrett, like Major Barrett, so no relation, I hasten to add. And you can download my podcast, Primitive Culture. I'm doing my best to get Clara back on the podcast as often as possible these days. She was a guest on the most recent episode. She and I used to host it together for a good stretch of time, about a year or so, I think. So you can find Clara on much of the back catalogue there as well.
That's awesome. How about you, Clara?
You can find me on Twitter at ClaraJeanMC, and I currently host my own podcast called The Tales We Tell, and you can find that on Twitter at The Tales Podcast.
Oh, cool. What's that about?
It's about feminism and women and gender in film, television, and fiction.
Oh, awesome. Okay, let's get into our diagnostic cycle and get this topic rolling.
Diagnostic cycle will be complete in 20 seconds.
So, Duncan and Clara, for topics like this, we usually like to ask everyone to kind of start it off by giving us a non-Trek WTF moment, just to get into the flavor of kind of how you're maybe looking at your list. So, Duncan, without getting into your Prime Directive too much, give me a non-Trek WTF moment that helped kind of tease your list.
Okay, this is going back quite a few years, but obviously the risk with any WTF moments is there's an element of kind of spoilers in there. So this is a pretty big spoiler, I'd say, for the movie Fight Club. But I just remember watching that movie in the cinema, and I was really enjoying it. I was, involved in the story and so on. And the big reveal, the big twist, sort of towards the end of that film, which is that basically, spoiler alert, one of the characters in the film is a figment of the imagination of the other character in the film and doesn't really exist. I just remember being absolutely floored by that, sitting there in the cinema and thinking, oh my God, what have I just been watching? What is going on? Do you know what I mean? That sense that like your whole concept of reality has kind of been turned on its head, and that everything you've seen, you have to kind of reevaluate and kind of construct in a different way. So that to me is a kind of real classic WTF moment. I didn't see it coming at all, but I it was totally blindsided by that. I'm just sitting there kind of with my jaw on the floor.
I love it. That was a game changer. It's one of the first to do that. My for that is The Sixth Sense. I would just remember thinking, holy crap, everything I just saw is different than what I thought I saw. And now I can't wait to hear your Prime Directive, so we'll talk about that in a minute. Clara, how about you? What's a non-Trek WTF moment?
So this is a spoiler, so I want to warn everybody, if you don't want to know how Game of Thrones ends, don't stop listening right now. Turn the podcast off. Actually, don't do that. Go watch Game of Thrones and then listen to the podcast.
I don't even know how Game of Thrones begins, so I'm banking on the fact I've forgotten this.
Okay, so block your ears right now.
I know it ends badly.
Okay. So my WTF moment was the end of Game of Thrones, specifically Bran becoming king of all Westeros. And I actually have a hashtag for that.
Okay, let's hear it.
Hashtag Bran out of ideas.
Oh man!
Because I lost it. I lost my.
So you did not like that.
I got to swear there. I mean,
You did not like that narrative.
I mean,
choice.
He was like the least interesting character. It's like
interesting.
All these people desperately, learning new skills, working hard, trying to save the planet or whatever, the world or whatever. And the one man who basically did almost nothing the entire time and got dragged around by a woman the entire time.
Oh my God!
Basically sits back and is just like by default the king. And also, he's kind of weird. I just don't feel like he's all there. I don't think he's going to be a good
This is a fascinating take. My Game of Thrones take is that I liked it. I was a casual observer. It was good, really good show. I enjoyed it. So I didn't really care about season 8 kind of being what it was. But man, everybody else was just like, I hate season 8. And I was like, I guess, okay. I don't really care that much. It was fine.
There was screaming in my house.
That is fascinating.
Like,
I
people
love
watching it with me were like screaming.
Okay, I can't wait to get our Prime Directive because this topic is so critical to. I think that our Prime Directives could be all over the place. This is fascinating. Mm-hmm. So mine is going to be probably different than your guys because my WTF moment. I started thinking about this, and well, I won't get into my Prime Directive, but my WTF moment is a tease. It is from Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me, which I'm a big Twin Peaks fan. I love it. I don't know if you guys seen it, Twin Peaks?
No, so
okay, so you're not going to know that. No, it's not even a spoiler. This is just the way David Lynch tells stories, and this is kind of the beginning of where he kind of got just where he would just do anything that popped into his head. He would throw, whether it's Inland Empire or Mulholland Drive, just the weird stuff that he puts in movies. And there's a scene, by the way, no one's going to know what I'm talking about because no one's seen this movie or remembers it. But there's a scene with David Lynch as Agent Gordon Cole, one of my favorite characters. They go to this airfield. They're going to meet with Chris Isaac and Kiefer Sutherland, who are two agents, and he's kind of giving them their assignment. And he gives them their assignment, he said, by pointing over to this airplane hangar and a plane, and there's Lil, the dancing girl, this very oddly dressed woman with like an orange wig, and she's just making weird faces with her face, and she's kind of moving her arms, and she's twisting in a circle. She's dressed all in red, and she's not making any noise, and it's the most bizarre thing you've ever seen. And they're just looking at her like, okay, all right. And Gordon's telling them what's happening. There's Lil. And then he says, okay, you got your assignment. They leave. And then they're driving away in the car. And then the agents kind of rehash to each other. Oh, well, when she closed her fist, it meant that the case is going to be, tightly wound inside this community or so. Just Bizarro world. And that to me, I'm sitting there going, what the fuck am I looking at? So that's a teaser for my list. Let's get into Prime Directives.
Okay. That's cool. I was kind of hoping we'd get some of them.
Yeah,
because I guess it'll be interesting. Obviously, you can go the direction of like the kind of plot twisty, what the fuck, or you can go the direction of the kind of like, what did I just see?
Yeah, let's talk about that right now. The Prime Directive.
I do not concur with your captain's decision.
She's following our Prime Directive.
Define Prime Directive.
Okay, so Duncan, let's hear, how did you break down your list? Because it sounds like you might be going with big plot twisty kind of moments.
I set myself quite, basically I had a very long list of episodes that kind of came to mind one way or another. But I decided I needed to narrow it down. I was quite strict with myself. So these were the kind of rules I set myself. First of all, these have to be good episodes and they have to be good what the fuck moments, because otherwise there's obviously the possibility of like Clara went with Game of Thrones of like, what the fuck went wrong?
Yes,
why did they make this terrible decision? So something like Threshold would be out for me, even though arguably, there's a lot of what the fuck in there. But I felt also, although I kind of talk a bit about plot twists, and a lot of mine kind of probably are along the lines of plot twists, I didn't want it to be, I feel like there's a difference in a plot twist where the plot is kind of going in one direction and then changes course. And to me, a what the fuck moment is something that like comes out and hits you on the side of the head. Do you know what I mean? That comes
changes
out
everything.
From left field,
yep.
But was completely unexpected. Sort of comes out of nowhere almost. And the third one, which kind of was in some ways the most limiting, was I wanted to only pick ones where I could actually genuinely remember the experience of watching that episode for the first time and what that moment felt like. And a lot of moments in Star Trek, I mean, there were loads. Weirdly, particularly in DS9, which is probably my favorite Star Trek series, there are loads of moments that kind of on paper I think are amazing moments. But I don't actually have a strong memory. Maybe I've watched those episodes so many times, I don't have that memory of like what it was like being surprised by those moments. So that was my kind of hardest rule in some ways, was that I had to actually kind of viscerally remember what it was like being surprised, being shocked like that. And obviously it kind of rules out anything where there were spoilers around, where there was,
right.
So it had to be something where it was genuinely, I was genuinely taken aback, and I had a kind of real sort of visceral reaction to it.
I like your number 3 because I often have to, I say this a lot on the show where I remind people and I remind myself to maybe try to judge something by that, to remember that first time you saw it and not the fact that you've seen it 20 times, the way we've all seen things. So I really like that. Clara, how about you? How did you break it down?
So I have quite a few. So for me, the first one was surprising for Star Trek. So something I didn't expect to see in Star Trek. The next one was out of character for a character. So something I didn't expect a character to do based on their character. Something that was unexpected, which is very simple. Something that's cringeworthy, like, oh my God, what WTF? Or embarrassing. Something that's like an event that seems to narratively step out of the story. And I guess that would be my Game of Thrones example. There's something that narratively doesn't make sense. And then the last one was an unexpected event or twist.
Okay.
So all of mine are quite random.
I love it. No, this is great because I figured there'd be this wide swath that you could choose from for a WTF moment. So mine is based on my Diagnostic Cycle pick. I'm trying not to do big horror moments or big twists or shock reveals. I'm just really going for these David Lynch kind of moments out of nowhere that make you go, am I watching Star Trek? What the hell just happened? What is that? And that kind of just bizarre, just out of left field placement of something that could be related to the plot, could be, I don't know, just whatever it is. So I eliminate a lot because of that. And I think, man, it's going to be interesting to see all the corners we touch on in this topic. We still might have some duplicates. We shall see. Mm-hmm. All right, let's get into the order of things with Third Ramadaclon.
I am a Jem'Hadar. He is a Vorta. It is the order of things.
Thank you, Third Ramadaclon. As always, a quick reminder on how we're going to go through the order of things. First, each of us will reveal our 5-word summary and a hashtag to tease our pick. Then we'll reveal our WTF moment and the specific episode that we're highlighting for that moment. And at the end, we'll ask everybody for some secondary system selections for the picks that maybe just missed their list. And if we have any duplicates, make sure you listen for the Defiant Torpedoes. Okay, Duncan, let's kick this off with you. What is your number 5 what the f*** moment in Star Trek?
Okay, my number 5 moment, 5-word summary: insult him at your peril. Hashtag sheer fucking hubris. This, for us, is pretty much bang up to date. I mean, you mentioned we're living in this strange kind of moment where we're in the 24-hour period where you've had one more episode of Picard than we have. But certainly of the first 3 episodes of Picard, which is what me and Clara have seen, this scene was actually the one that shocked me the most of anything in what I'd seen so far. And that's not because I have an issue about swearing or think they shouldn't swear in Star Trek or whatever. But the fact that admiral swore at Captain Picard, literally, like, I almost fell off my chair. And I'd been watching, we've been reintroduced to Picard. He seems like this quite kindly old man. He seems as decent as he ever was, but also quite frail. And this, he's got a kind of gentleness to him. He's got a kind of sweetness to him. He goes into this meeting, okay, admittedly, maybe he acts like a bit of an idiot in some ways in this meeting, asking for a ship and generously saying he'll accept its emotion and so on. But when the admiral used that F-bomb at him, I just couldn't believe it. And I thought it was just such a brilliant scene for kind of demonstrating, yes, this is not the next generation. Yes, Picard is going to kind of face new problems. This is not the Captain Picard that we're used to seeing with all this authority and all this kind of command, and kind of people will follow his orders and do what he says. And you couldn't encapsulate that better than with this moment where this woman just swears in his face. And I totally understand many people say, they think she's got a good point. She's kind of in the right. I think that's one of the things that makes the scene interesting is, it's not completely black and white, who's in the right, who's in the wrong. But just the idea of having a character come on and swear at Captain Picard, I just thought was brilliant and amazing. And it completely floored me.
I love that the first what the f*** moment is a literal what the f***. moment. Amazing. So my only comment I love this pig. It's fantastic, and it really was kind of an eye opener. The thing I'll say about her, of course, and I wrote this in my review for Trek Core, that she's making really good, cogent points, and they're having, it's like a real discussion until the end when she makes it personal, and she really freaking goes off on him for, obviously she's upset because of the interview and the way he framed Starfleet, but she made it really personal at the end, and she lost all the high ground there. Sorry, Clancy. Okay.
And that go home, that's the worst bit of it, actually.
Yeah, exactly.
Looking is the go home.
Do what you do best. Go home, because you quit us 20 years ago. That's brutal. That was not cool. Clara, what's your take on this one?
Yeah, so I don't think I was actually that shocked. Because, well, first of all, because of the cheeky feckers, is it cheeky feckers or cheeky whatever? Yeah,
Feckers,
had come before. Yeah, so I was more shocked by that. I was like, oh, a Romulan swearing in English with an Irish accent. This is unusual. So I think I was more surprised by that. So by the time I got to the Admiral, I was like, and then I also was, I was more excited by the word hubris. I was like, I love that they decided to use the word hubris in Star Trek. Because you know what? Sometimes the captains of the starships and Starfleet officers are kind of hubristic. They kind of should be taken down a peg sometimes. I don't think the way that she treated him was nice. Just tell an old man to go home.
Yeah.
Like he's obsolete. That's ageism, really, isn't it? Let's be honest. So I don't think it was nice, but I wasn't kind of like shocked, as shocked as Duncan, shall we say.
And he's got a little bit of a CV, Admiral Clancy. Okay. I think he's bought a little bit of grace from you. Okay. Clara, how about you? What's your number 5 WTF moment?
So my number 5 WTF moment is Chakotay starts dating 7 of 9. And my hashtag is the really odd couple. And this is Voyager season 7, episodes 25 and 26, known as Endgame 1 and 2, I think. And let's be honest, lots of people ship different couples. Lots of people like different characters with other different characters, lots of different types of relationships, but I have not met one single Trek fan that has approved of 7 of 9.
Team C7 right here, Clara.
Oh, really? You're the first person. I'm not going to lie.
No, I have so many good friends that support me on this this hopeless endeavor. But I love this pick. I love it because it did come out of left field, obviously.
And just like, it just, all of it is wrong. He never was supportive of her early in the show. He obviously had a thing with Janeway. She's a lot younger than him. It's kind of this weird situation where he has to teach her how to kiss. I mean, no, so when I first watched that, I was like, what is going on? I think it was sort of hinted in episodes before, like the finale.
Yeah, there was a few with like,
they made dinner together, right, and play the piano and stuff. Yeah,
there's human error.
There could be friendship, there could be a little bit of romantic tension, but the idea that he marries her eventually, I know that's like,
that's not, no, don't say that's
the alternate universe thingy, but
that's not.
We can put that to bed pretty soon, I reckon.
Exactly.
9 in a few weeks' time, and
pretty much
would be seriously surprised if there's a wedding ring on her finger.
That is, let's be clear, they are not married. I love them in Natural Law and Human Error, so I like it. But I totally get that I am in the vast minority on this topic. Duncan, how about you? What's your take on C7 as a WTF moment?
Yeah, I have to say, I thought it was bad enough when, 7 was involved with the holodeck version of Chakotay. I kind of, that was a bit of a stretch for me. So the idea that they actually got together. And it's so weird because in Natural Law, which is there's only a few episodes before the end of Voyager, right? They're not getting in a relationship there. Like if ever there was an episode to get the two together, that was the one, but they don't do it. So it's kind of this weird, you sort of think, well, okay, so there's a little bit of chemistry. Maybe they kind of set something up, doesn't go anywhere. Surely that means it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
I think we'll find pretty soon that this was not a relationship that went the distance.
Good.
No, I don't. I think that's safe to say too. And obviously they reset everything at the end of Endgame anyway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. Let's go to my number 5 pick. I'm going straight for the juggler here with my first pick. 5 words in a hashtag. Just leave the babies behind. Hashtag Warp 10 WTF. And it's, of course, Voyager's Threshold, Season 2, Episode 15. and it's the salamander lizard babies. I'm not picking the tongue scene. That's a little too horror moment for me, although that's a serious WTF moment for me too, because at the point when the tongue came out, I was like, what is going on in this episode? But of all the craziness of that episode, it was that moment at the end where they literally went all the way there, whereas there's a shot of Janeway and Paris 100% transformed into salamander-type creatures who mate and procreate and then get collected by Chakotay and Tuvok, who know that they procreated and see the babies. And then they say they transfer back to Voyager and they transform them back into the humans without any issues at all. And I just remember that last 3 minutes be like, what the fuck was that? That was too far a bridge to cross for me. But all right, what is your threshold take, Duncan?
If there's anything to be said in Threshold's favour, it's that it absolutely kind of nails the what the fuck aspect of it. I mean, like I said, it would have been excluded from my list because I think overall it doesn't work as an episode. But I do quite enjoy just how batshit crazy it is, and I think they really went there. You know, that kind of like what is it? Mirror. Giorgio says in Discovery, you know, there are no bad. Or someone says there's no bad ideas or whatever. I mean, this is like. You can imagine the script meeting for that one. This was very much a kind of there are no bad ideas. Let's just do whatever the hell comes to mind.
Yeah, for sure. Clara, how about you on Threshold?
I mean, I'm just worried because I think there's a potential for these salamander babies to evolve into like a humanoid salamander species and to develop warp capability, you know, and then eventually become like a Federation planet someday. All because, you know, Janeway and Paris were not humans when they decided to like get together and produce offspring. I mean, we're just talking about a whole series of things that could happen as a result of this. I think they should have taken those babies. Can't kill them. I mean, you can't devolve them into being humans because then Janeway is going to have a whole bunch of kids with Paris, and that would be horrifying. So, like, I don't know what you do with the salamanders. They turn back time, slingshot around the sun, and just prevent the whole thing from happening. I mean,
that's the best idea. That's the best idea I've heard. They kind of box themselves into a corner, and everything you just described would be less of a WTF moment than what they went with. So, all right, let's go to round 4. Duncan, what's your number 4 pick?
My number 4 pick. My 5-word summary is: resistance is no longer futile. # the coldest open. This is Voyager Season 3, Episode 26, Scorpion Part 1. And this is literally just a 20-second segment of that episode. It's, for my money, the best cold open, or at least the most WTF-ish cold open in the whole of Star Trek. I mean, there are others. The Enterprise, I feel, kind of tried to kind of almost repeat that feeling in a sense of the episode Twilight. But for me, Scorpion was the one where it was just absolutely, you know, you get these Borg ships coming into shot. We've been waiting for 3 years now to see the Borg on this show properly. I mean, they kind of teased it. They've had kind of sort of Borg light episodes in a way, but this is the Borg actually appearing, actually, you know, turning up. This is the most deadly, the most scary enemy that Star Trek has ever produced, really. Voyager's going to face off against them. And yet, what do we get in those 20 seconds? We get kind of half a line of dialogue from the Borg, and then from off screen, these bolts of lightning come and blow their cubes to pieces. And we don't even know who's done it. We don't even, you know, it's an absolutely, for me, it's a perfect what the moment, because like I say, it's completely out of left field. There's no context really. We don't really know anything. It's totally unexpected. And in some ways you could say the whole episode that follows is a bit of a what the moment for the show as well, because it does slightly kind of turn everything on its head. And, you know, Janeway's going to come and propose something that would have seemed unthinkable in Star Trek before. And I think really that kind of 20-second tease is what really it sets it up so perfectly.
Okay, I love this pick, and this is a perfect example of putting yourself back into your mindset the first time you watch this, because we've all seen this now 30, you know, however many times. And at that moment, that first time you watched it, was like, what the F is happening? This is absolutely crazy. It's an amazing open, amazing cold open. I love this pick. And I have to point this out because we keep statistics that we're going to relay at the end. Not only do we have 3 straight Voyager episodes picked, do we have 3 straight Brannon Braga episodes picked? He is a what the master. I knew I was going to keep track of this, so I'm loving this. Clara, how about you? What's your take on Scorpion?
I sort of feel like that, like, you know, the Borg are prime fodder for WTF moments, aren't they? I mean, one of the ones I remember, not Voyager, but a Borg moment is in First Contact when they discover that the Earth is entirely assimilated. Like the Borg, I just feel like for as organized and as structured as they are as a species, they do tend to come out of nowhere and be like, boo, like, like you thought this wasn't going to be a problem. Like, we're going to assimilate you all. And then you're like, wow. So I have to say, I agree with him that this is like, a good moment. I do remember being kind of like, oh, this is intriguing. And because it's so early in the episode, you're like, wow, I have to keep watching.
Really cool setup, since we were kind of waiting for the Borg to show up. I love it. Okay, Clara, how about you? What's your number 4 pick?
So my number 4 pick is Cisco deletes the evidence. Hashtag Cisco's compromise. And it's DS9, season 6, episode 19, In the Pale Moonlight. And well, a brief summary is obviously Cisco's trying to find a way to get the Romulans into the Dominion Wall, and he enlists the help of Garrick. And then over the course of the episode starts doing more and more things, or having to do more and more things that he deems to be questionable, possibly immoral. But the thing that is really like, what the fuck, is that he records all of this in a kind of cathartic captain's log and then deletes it all. And it's the deleting it all that's like, I was like, when I first watched it, I remember being like, oh, wow. It never occurred to me that captains could delete their own logs. I just thought they were so honest and upstanding, and that they would just, you know, that the log was like something that couldn't be shredded, you know. The fact he's just like, delete it. And then also that he's like, you know what, I'd do it again. Just goes to show you that he's a different kind of commander, leader than some of the other captains. And also that in a time of war, lots of things happen that you have to later on justify to yourself.
Yeah, well, I mean, what a moment. It's an iconic, all-time, game-changing Trek moment, and definitely a what the f*** moment. I never would have thought of this one. It's genius. Duncan, what's your take on In the Pale Moonlight?
I think in a way, again, you could say that whole episode is a what the f*** moment, because the whole story of it is basically, you know, this idea of the things that you never expected to see on Star Trek. This is a story we would never have expected to see on Star Trek, to the extent that it is like Star Trek redacted. You know, basically it never happened officially. It does raise this kind of amazing question of, you know, what other deleted captain's logs are there out there for like the episodes that we never got to see because they got wiped one way or another. I mean, who knows? We think the card's all squeaky clean, but, you know, we don't know what he might have deleted himself, you know, if he wasn't happy with it. But I think absolutely it's an amazing episode. Obviously, it kind of goes without saying, and great dramatic ending. And the fact that he deletes at the end is just the kind of perfect sort of cherry on top of that very strange, very dark, very kind of un-Star Trek and yet brilliantly Star Trek episode.
It's quite literally perfect. Fantastic pick. All right, let's close out round 4 with my number 4 pick. We're going cuckoo birds again. 5 words and a hashtag. Red Jack occupies Piglet's dead body? Hashtag WTF reincarnate. And my episode is, no one knows what that means unless it's the original series, Wolf in the Fold, season 2, episode number 23. So the Piglet moment is that actor John Fiedler was the voice of Piglet in the 60s and 70s. So I grew up with this guy as Piglet. And here he is in Wolf in the Fold playing this administrator, Mr. Hingis, and just kind of a little bit of a busybody and annoying. And, you know, I was 10 years old. I had no idea that they were setting him up to be Jack the Ripper, which is another WTF moment. But basically the whole episode's WTF. And at one point, Hingis dies when Red Jack, the evil spirit that's bouncing around and killing these women through other bodies, leaves his body. Mr. Hingis dies. They go on. They do like 10 more minutes of stuff. There's this wacky audio of Red Jack, Jack the Ripper, through the computer on the Enterprise. And then he jumps back into his body And all of a sudden he gets up and he's fighting. And I just remember as a kid being like, what the fuck is happening? And that doesn't even go into the fact that Scotty killed 3 women in this episode while being possessed by this evil spirit that was Jack the Ripper. So yeah, WTF. The one thing I'll add, of course, is this episode was written by Robert Bloch, who wrote Psycho, which is a spectacular movie, one of my favorites. So yeah, it's just one big WTF. Clara, what's your take on Wolf in the Fold?
I mean, I totally agree. It really is like one of the weirdest episodes I've ever seen. Yeah. And that they just keep putting these women, they keep lining them up, like pushing them forward to be like victims.
No, but Clara, that was okay in the 60s. So
that was like normal, right? That
was my God.
I mean, I just have a real problem with Jack the Ripper entering Star Trek. I just think Jack the Ripper should be kept out of sci-fi. You know, I mean, there's already enough stuff for Jack the Ripper to be involved in: period dramas, historical fiction. Like, let's just leave him out of sci-fi.
You can literally do it all in Star Trek. Here's Jack the Ripper. Duncan, what's your take on Wolf in the Fold?
I absolutely agree with Clara. I mean, I think to take this in a kind of serious direction for a moment, which possibly the episode doesn't deserve, I think it's true that the kind of fascination with Jack the Ripper is there's something slightly distasteful about it. And, and there's been a very interesting case over here. I don't know if it's kind of resonated over in the States in the last year or so. There's a woman called Hallie Rubinold who wrote a book called The Five, which recently won the big kind of award for nonfiction books just last year, I think. And what that book was an attempt to reconstruct the lives of the 5 women who were murdered by Jack the Ripper. And the interesting thing that she does when she writes this book is she pieces together their lives up to the point, obviously, when they were murdered. One of the things she does is she discovers things about them, like the generally held assumption is that they were all sex workers. In fact, probably, maybe some of them were, but mostly they were not. So she finds this information about them, but she also manages to write this whole book essentially about the Ripper murders and almost never mention Jack the Ripper. She kind of defiantly refuses to give him any attention, because I think there's this kind of sense that all this attention has been put onto this kind of character, and really, there are kind of human beings' lives there. Sorry, that's a very serious and kind of po-faced approach to this episode. I would say also, you rightly say this is a kind of what the fuck episode from beginning to end. Yeah. I almost think that moment you picked is like the least of it. The most amazing bit for me is early on, where first of all, Scotty has developed this kind of rampant misogyny as a result of a woman who dropped a wrench on his head or something. There was some kind of industrial accident and a woman was involved, and now Scotty hates women. The solution to that is to take him to basically this kind of, I don't know, what is it? Like a sort of belly dancing club / possibly brothel, strip club, and the idea is that if they can get Scotty laid, then he will, be cured of this kind of mental derangement. And then, most shockingly of all, I think, when it becomes fairly likely that Scotty who it's just been acknowledged has a mad hatred of women, appears to have suddenly started murdering women. Kirk's reaction is just like, well, it can't possibly be Scotty. No, it can't be Scotty. We have to find out what else is going on. It's like this bizarrely, like if this was Star Trek HR, this is sort of terrible way of dealing with this potential situation. So I think it's kind of what the fuck from beginning to end, pretty much.
But Duncan, you're forgetting about Piglet. Okay, that's what.
Well, yeah, there's that as well.
Oh God, yeah. Let's move off this terrible topic and conversation, because it really is an entire WTF inappropriate moment. Let's go to the Super Round, round 3. Duncan, what is your number 3 pick?
Okay, now this is a pick that is very special to me and very special, I hope, to the two of you as well. Actually, we have something in common around this pick. My 5-word summary is: it should have been O'Brien. #, damn it, Ira. And this is Deep Space Nine, Season 8, Episode 1, as featured in the Deep Space Nine documentary, and specifically the moment where Ira Steven Behr comes into the meeting of the scriptwriters of DS9 and says that while he'd been driving all the way up, driving over there, he decided he was going to kill off O'Brien in this first episode. He decides to kill Nog instead. And everyone in the audience, I mean, we were sat there watching it. I was sat there watching it with Aaron Eisenberg in like the row in front. We were all kind of watching it. We got to see Captain Nog coming back. We were really excited. And then he's like, yeah, and then the ship blows up and he's dead.
So the Defiant blows up, killing Nog. We kill Nog. I'm sorry, guys. Someone has to go. I drove all the way here thinking, O'Brien, we kill O'Brien, it'll freak everyone out. But by the time I parked, it was like, Nog.
Damn it, Ira! Don't kill Nog! Jesus Christ! Bullshit.
I can't even talk about it. I can't even talk about it. It's still,
I'm totally okay with Nog dying.
It's too raw.
Clara.
I'm sorry. I kind of I don't know. It just I mean, it's sad, for him to lose his leg and then to be blown to smithereens in the cold, dark, expanse of space. But someone's got to be sacrificed, and it might as well be Nog. I mean, compared to, O'Brien's got kids.
Nog probably has kids by now.
Actually, Nog
don't know enough about him. O'Brien's kids are grown up by now. They can cope.
Okay, so if it's not going to be O'Brien, it's not going to be Nog. Who else should it be?
I'm not putting anybody else up. I'm just saying it hurts that Nog is lost. They all hurt. But man, Nog, what a story. What an arc. I love this outside the box. Season 8.
Sorry, this
Nog.
may mess up your statistics slightly.
No, not at all.
Have to find a way to put that in.
No way. It's a deep space. In my head, season 8, episode 1 is canon. I mean, I love
that's canon. Okay, we saw it on screen. It's on screen. We saw it.
Yep.
And obviously, the thing of Nog dying, since Aaron Eisenberg passing away, has an extra kind of level of an extra kind
melancholy,
of level of sadness, melancholy
pathos,
and everything. And absolutely,
sure.
He was really. His contributions to that documentary in some ways were part of the kind of real sort of heart and soul of it as well.
Yeah, they did. I've said it before that my favorite part of that whole documentary was the season 8 story that they crafted and were able to show us. So cool. Okay, Clara, how about you? What's your round 3 pick?
So my round 3 pick, unfortunately, is not nearly as sentimental or as touching as Duncan's. It's much more a very strange one, a little bit like yours. So it's a dwarf rides Captain Kirk, who's acting like a horse.
There we go. There's your
galactic horseplay. And so this is from the original series, season 3, episode 10, Plato's Stepchildren. Truly the most excruciating 50 minutes, 45 minutes, whatever, of television that you will ever see. Except maybe, I don't know, Quark becoming a woman. I don't know. I mean, basically it's horrifying. It's horrifying. So they go to a planet. There's a whole bunch of aliens in there who basically are dressed like ancient Greeks, which I also find offensive as someone who studied classics, who basically can use their mind to make people do random, stupid stuff. And they make Spock act insane, and they make them sing. Never needed that. They make Kirk act like a horse and neigh like a horse and run around on his all fours like a horse and then rear up like a horse with a dwarf on his back. And I was forever scarred after watching it, and I never want to see it again. But you know what? I did it for this podcast. I did it for you, Jim. I watched it again.
That is a serious WTF moment from TOS, Plato's Stepchildren. I'm pretty sure it's the first ever mention of Plato's Stepchildren on Trek Ranks, even in secondary systems.
Probably the last.
Yeah. Duncan, anything to add on Plato's Stepchildren?
I mean, it's a pretty strange episode from beginning to end, but I think that is absolutely the moment. It's weird. I was looking for a GIF of that moment.
There is one. There is one. I see it all the time.
I'm sure there is one. But the weird thing is I misremembered it, and I remembered him pretending to be a cat. I'd forgotten it was a horse, because I think there was this scene in Big Brother over here. They did the celebrity Big Brother. And there was a politician who Clara will remember called George Galloway.
Oh my God.
Who, in a similar moment of kind of total, self-debasement and humiliation, was crawling around on the floor pretending to be a cat in the middle of the Big Brother house, because that was the task they'd been set that week. And I think, I don't know whether his political career was ever particularly going anywhere, but I'm sure this probably didn't help being kind of identified with this. And so in my mind, that's exactly what I mean, Kirk at least had the excuse that he was, being kind of mind controlled and body, do you know what I mean? He was kind of being forced into it. This was, not entirely voluntary.
This episode is famous because it's like the first ever interracial kiss on American television, right? And I'm like, but what episode to come out of? It's horrifying, and then they have this watershed moment where it's like this amazing moment where it's like this is the first interracial kiss, but they're being forced to kiss each other. It's not like even that interracial loving kiss.
Even that, I mean, listen, it's a nice thing to talk about because it helps because it's representation, for lack of a better term. And you talk about it, that's a good thing. But if you break it down and dissect it, it's not what you're saying it really is.
Yeah, exactly.
It's different. So anyway, okay, let's go to my round 3 pick to close it out. We're going back to the master, my all-time favorite Trek scribe, Brandon Braga, my 5 words and a hashtag. Being a frog's no fun, hashtag WTF genetic mutation. And it is the TNG episode Genesis, Season 7, Episode 19, Deanna Troi turning into an amphibian. And I know I tried to stay away from horror moments, and I don't really think this is a horror moment so much. And again, this is one of those ones where you need to kind of put yourself back into the first time you watched Genesis. The first mutation that we see is Troi. So up until that point, if you haven't been spoiled, you don't know what's really happening. So when Troi leaps out of the bathtub, and the makeup is amazing, and the gills, and her acting, by the way, is phenomenal. I mean, she's like doing this kind of puckering with she grasping for air. It just looks incredible with the molting skin and everything. And that, I just remember that moment being like, what the fuck is happening? Deanna Troi is turning into an amphibian, and it was really, really impressive. And then I love the end of the scene because they're kind of like analyzing and figuring out what's happening. And then she just kind of dives back into the water. So it's a really cool moment in terms of just kind of messing with the expectations of what you're going to see on Star Trek. And I'm just going to throw my bonus WTF moment is Worf's venom sac, because that scares the hell out of me even to this day. Duncan, what's your take on Genesis and Deanna Troi's amphibian mutation?
Yeah, I mean, there are so many moments to choose from in that episode. Again, pretty much every character that gets, involved in this weird way turns into something kind of horrific and grotesque and bizarre. You've got Barclay with these kind of spider eyes and everything as well. And I love this as a pick because I think it's great. It does really get to the heart of that sort of what you described with Twin Peaks, that kind of, what the fuck am I watching? What is this? What is the sort of strange and the alien, which, as much as we might say, okay, this is sort of slightly pushing the boundary of what Star Trek does, and maybe that's what we associate with Brandon Braga and these kind of like wacky ideas that kind of push outside that quite safe, clinical kind of slightly formulaic, slightly kind of, structured environment of Starfleet. At the same time, Star Trek is about going out there and encountering the unknown, and these kind of storylines are very much doing that. They're like, bringing the unknown and like dumping it right in front of you in all its weird strangeness. I think it's definitely whether you love it or hate it, it's definitely a weird episode, and it absolutely fits this remit perfectly.
Yeah. Any take on Genesis, Clara?
I mean, I just wonder, like, how everybody goes back to serving on the Enterprise after this incident. I mean, I just think about my work colleagues. If I went to work tomorrow, and everyone had sort of morphed into something different, I might really struggle.
You seem to be forgetting Janeway was a salamander.
That's true. That's true. Yeah, I mean, that's a warning if ever there was one. Like, don't go faster than 49.
Your point, Clara, is like it's why when so many of these people are nitpicking and complaining about certain things, it's like, hey, Janeway was a salamander and then turned back into a human like 3 hours later, right? So, okay. Anyway, that's not what we do on Trek Ranks. This is about all the reasons we love Star Trek. But maybe not so much in this episode. Let's go to Duncan. Round 2. What's your number 2 pick?
Well, it's interesting. There's a bit of a theme developing, I suppose, about these moments of like transformation and kind of body horror and this kind of thing. And my list generally is pretty light on this, but my number 2 pick absolutely leans into that kind of the grotesque, the horrific. And for my money, it's probably one of the most horrific moments in the whole of Star Trek. Certainly one of the most shockingly horrific. My 5-word summary is episode takes its title literally, #face off. This is Voyager Season 1, Episode 13, Faces. And this, I think, was the episode I actually had in mind, because I suggested this topic to you years back.
That's right. I forgot to mention that. Yeah.
WTF moments. And I can't remember what made me come up with that idea, but I'm pretty sure, thinking back on it and thinking what I was watching at the time and stuff, it was almost certainly this episode, because that moment where the Vidian scientist tries to kind of impress B'Elanna Torres by wearing the face, literally, of crewman Dorst is just, it's brilliant. I mean, it's because it's so horrific. And the Vidians are, pretty horrific. They've been set up in this quite grotesque, quite horrific way as it is. What I think is so brilliant about this moment is it's like visually uncomfortable, like it's disgusting to watch. It's horrifying to see this. And the fact that we don't see him being killed or anything. We sort of see him being led away. And the next thing we see is his face on someone else's body. But it's also the fact that it's played in this way where, he's trying to impress her. He thinks she'll like him more. There's just something so twisted. And so, I mean, you mentioned Psycho, that kind of idea of something that is, so it's both physically repulsive and shocking and horrific, and also kind of mentally very disturbing as a kind of image, as a kind of moment. And I just think, for me, that's probably the moment in the whole of Star Trek that is the most kind of shocking in that kind of visceral, disgusting, horrific way.
I did not think of this one. Lieutenant Durst's face on that Vidian scientist. This is an inspired pick. I love it. It's a horror moment, but it's also a WTF moment where you're just like, whoa! And it's that kind of crazy. It's just that when they stretch the boundaries of the kind of stories you can tell and what you can do, because that was a very, very memorable WTF moment. I love this pick. Clara, what's your take on this one?
Yeah, I completely forgot this happened, actually.
Right. You blocked it out for good reason.
Yeah, now I'm remembering it. I'm like, yeah, that was pretty grim. It reminds me, it does remind me very much of horror, actually. There's a TV series called American Horror Story, and the second season of American Horror Story, there's a character that basically makes a head, like a hood of basically different people's faces and heads. It's the idea that this poor crew member is disposable, right? He's just but his face is useful. I don't know. It's horrifying. It's definitely a what the f*** moment.
Yeah, I love this pick. Brilliant. And I'm glad you mentioned that, Duncan. I meant to say that earlier, that Duncan had suggested this topic, I think a couple of years ago. He sent me a long list. I remember thinking, that's a good one someday. And we're finally doing it. All right. Clara, what's your number 2 pick?
So my number 2 pick is Ash Tyler snaps Culber's neck.
Oh.
And it #don't let sleeping Klingons lie. Like, lie down.
Wow. Yeah.
Like sleep. And it's Star Trek Discovery, Season 1, Episode 10. And it's basically, and I think it was a shock for me, because at that moment in the series, you're actually more concerned about Paul Stamets than you are about Culber, because Paul Stamets is the one who's kind of in this weird psychotic or weird mental situation, isn't he? And then Culber's taking care of everybody in the sick bay and just tries to help out Ash Tyler, who's tossing and turning, and the Klingon, that he likes, sleeper Klingon, spy, and just turns around and snaps his neck. And it's just so quick and abrupt and vicious, and it's like quite an explicitly portrayed murder, shall we say. And I was like, no, because I'd grown, and I was also like, who's going to be the Doctor now? He was such a good Doctor. So I was quite upset about that. It's cruel, basically.
It's a serious WTF moment. I mean, yeah, it was absolute shock value. We won't get into all the pros and cons, or not pros. There are no pros, but the deep feelings that people have about that moment. But it was absolutely staggeringly emotional and amazing. I'm glad that it wasn't the end of Culber, and he came back, and I think that's Despite Yourself, the episode? You said it was episode 10, right? Yeah, it was the first one in that second.
I used to Despite Yourself, I think.
Okay, cool. Duncan, what's your take on this this moment in Discovery?
Absolutely, really shocking moment, and it shocked a lot of people. And as you say, there was a big controversy around it. To the extent that there was all that kind of backpedaling going on the after show, Twitter, and so on. I have to say this. I mean, for me, it didn't make my list because of my my kind of rules that I set myself. Unfortunately, this moment was spoiled for me. And I think with this one about Culber in particular, because it exploded in such a big way immediately on social media when it happened, it was almost like impossible to avoid seeing to avoid like working out pretty much exactly what was going to happen, even if you were kind of not really trying to find out. So it wasn't such a what the fuck moment for me because I was basically expecting it. But I think absolutely, to someone who hadn't been spoiled, that moment is, totally out of left field, really shocking, really kind of horrifying, and absolutely. And I think Clara's right. There's a kind of element of the sort of bait and switch there that they focus all your attention on Stamets, and then actually it's Culber that something terrible happens to.
Right. Well, let's change gears with my number 2 pick, which is a straight up David Lynchian WTF moment. My 5 words in a hashtag: braids, chest tattoos, and chainsaws. Hashtag WTF apology. And it is from Enterprise, episode A Night in Sick Bay, from season 2, episode 5. And it's Archer apologizing to the Cretaceans. And if you don't remember this moment, so this is a bit of a polarizing episode. I actually like it. I think it's pretty good. I'm a kind of a sucker for the Porthos story in this one, but it's a little bit of a weird episode. I get it. But at the end of this episode, this apology, if you remember, and if you haven't, I recommend going back and watching it. You've got Archer apologizing to the Cretaceans for stuff that happened in the episode, and it is bonkers. Like, they literally were in the writer's room thinking, and by the way, this is another Brandon Braga script with Rick Berman. Here is Archer with weird kind of braids in his hair. He's got no shirt on. He's got chest tattoos. He's got back tattoos. He's incanting some kind of weird greeting to the Cretaceans. He's got a chainsaw. He's pretty like lathered up. I don't know if it's oil or sweat. He's cutting off pieces of a ceremonial log. He's placing them in some weird pattern and incanting and chanting to them, all to curry favor from the Cretaceans in the last moments of this wacky episode. And it is a straight up WTF moment. I still can't believe that was on Star Trek. Duncan, do you remember this one at all?
I do. I certainly do remember it. This is another one of those where you kind of wonder, did Scott Bakula lose a bet? I mean, what happened? How did this come about? Because, and he obviously is a real trooper and kind of put up with it and went through with it. I think the closest we get is that, is it an Insurrection where Picard is having to wear this kind of funny thing over his head and learn to recite?
Oh, yeah. Eugene Chafor.
Exactly. But that's the level that it gets to with Picard. He kind of ends up looking a little bit silly. Archer is just basically totally humiliated in this moment, basically, by being made to do this ridiculous stuff. But again, you could say this is part of their remit. This is kind of going out there. This is meeting other cultures. This is kind of doing what those cultures expect of you. And it's just being pushed to the nth degree. So, yeah, absolutely a WTF moment.
Clara, what's your take on Archer's apology to the Cretaceans?
Yeah, I also love it. I like it because sometimes in Star Trek, all the different sort of Federation worlds can be communicating in what seems to be like quite a uniform way, like everyone's kind of, standard English, everyone's kind of getting to sort of behaving sort of like in a Starfleet way, in a Federation way. Yeah. And this just really feels like, they've met a very strange alien species that, have these very particular, customs. It reminds me a little bit of, is it Darmok and, what's it called?
Darmok, yeah.
I can't remember. I forgot this. Yeah, Darmok. And how, like the alien species that talks nothing but metaphors.
Oh, yeah. That's actually a good one, too. That would be good.
It sort of makes sense that you're dealing with something completely different and completely alien. I think it's funny getting Archer to do it as well, because Archer can seem, really genuine and kind of noble. But this is completely taking away his ability.
Yep. It's very memorable, to say the least, and it feels like completely out of left field for Trek, which I like as well. So, okay, let's go to round one. Duncan, what's your number one WTF moment?
My number one WTF moment is not a kind of horror, grotesque kind of moment at all. This is really more of a kind of mind-blowing moment. And this is another one that's very special to me personally, because it's one of the first episodes of Star Trek. I think it's kind of around the time that I started to fall in love with Star Trek. One of the first episodes of Next Gen that I watched. I remember watching this episode. I used to go and stay with my cousins who lived in Dublin, and they had satellite TV, which meant that they got episodes of Next Generation quite a long time in advance of what we got on the BBC. And it was actually staying with them that I kind of first got into watching Star Trek, because they had all these old episodes taped. And it must have been around kind of towards the latter years of Next Generation. So I was kind of binging at their house all these episodes. And this was one of the early ones I watched, and that really, I think, gave me a sense of what Star Trek could be, or what Star Trek could do. My 5-word summary is: the adventure of the Hollow Enterprise. #elementary, my dear captain. This is the Next Generation Season 6, Episode 12, Ship in a Bottle. And it's specifically the moment when Data realizes that he and Picard have not left the holodeck, but have been participating in an illusion for basically pretty much the entirety of the episode. And I just remember sitting there, and again, it's that kind of jaw on the floor moment of realization of like, wow, this, everything I've seen, just like with Fight Club, many years later, in a sense, everything I've seen is not what I thought it was. It absolutely blew my mind. And it was one of the things that made me fall in love with Star Trek and made me think, wow, this is a show that can really go out there, can really surprise you, can do stuff that you didn't see coming, or that didn't seem possible somehow, could kind of bend the fabric of reality somehow. Going back and watching it again, this week for this, one of the things that I loved about it, which I don't think struck me at the time so much, is it's also a very kind of Next Gen moment, in that sense that Next Gen is quite sort of safe and quite contained and everything. The way that Picard takes this like mind-blowing, existentially troubling news, he's so philosophical about it. He's so kind of reasonable about it. It's like, yeah, okay, here's Geordie, who we've been working with, who we think's our friend, who we've known for 6 years, but actually this Geordie's a fake, and none of this is real. He's just like totally like, okay, yeah, good point. Okay, Data, I'm on board with this. I get this. Let's get on with it. They come up with a plan. They kind of solve the mystery. It's very kind of methodical. And it's only Barclay who at the very end of the episode has this kind of momentary freak out, saying computer end program in the observation lounge. Because that, of course, is, again, in this kind of, a bit like you were saying with these kind of Brannon Braggery ideas of like what's real and what's not, and the kind of terror of all that. You get it again in Frame of Mind in some ways, but in some ways I love the way that the episode itself is very it is quite self-contained. It is kind of safe. It's not really pushing those buttons, but at the same time, it presents this scenario, and it's a massive twist, but it's a twist that is so kind of elegantly done. And so perfect. And in some ways, you should have seen it coming. I mean, maybe not me on my first viewing, because I didn't know Star Trek that well, but we know that no one can leave the holodeck. Holograms can't leave the holodeck.
Right.
So from that point on a rewatch, or maybe if you're more familiar with Star Trek, you're thinking, okay, there's a catch here. Do you know what I mean? We're looking to see what the catch is. But for me, watching it, having only seen a few episodes before, I had no idea that was coming, and I was just completely blown away by it.
It's a classic Trek double switch, which I'm thinking actually that would be a good topic too for Trek Ranks. Yeah, this one, huge twist. I love it. It's a total WTF moment. Clara, what's your take on Ship in a Bottle?
I mean, it's interesting what Duncan's saying, like this being like one of the first like Star Trek episodes that really got him loving Star Trek. And I think that it's also not just the twist. It's like he was saying, Picard's reaction to it. There's something very comforting, I think, especially when you're growing up, in watching a bunch of people deal with something that is like completely and utterly startling, but in like a really calm way, and coming up with a sort of a game plan, an action plan of what they're going to do. Like I always found it was quite comforting to me that Picard it was quite hard to like sort of, I don't know, like he's quite unflappable, it's quite hard to sort of like get sort of really like flustered. And I always was quite encouraged by the fact that in Next Generation, like when they have a problem, they go and they talk it out like in a briefing room. Do you know what I mean? So the idea that he he would like suddenly realize that what he's, or the data would suddenly realize that what they're experiencing isn't actually real. And he's like, you know what? It's okay. We can solve this. There's something kind of comforting about that when you're a teenager, I think, or a young child.
I love the way you frame that, because or when you're 20-something or 30-something.
Yeah, well, actually,
when I was watching it, because it really is comforting. It really was a great learning tool to be able to, this is how you can deal with problems, and this is how you can deal with adversity. I love that point. Really, really, really good. Okay, Clara, what's your number one pick for a WTF moment?
So my number one pick is "The line must be drawn here." Hashtag I broke my little ships. And this is Picard's furious outburst in First Contact, the movie. And
love this pick.
I mean, the WTF moment starts even before he has this outburst, when he calls Worf a coward. When a Klingon is telling you to stop fighting, that you should stop fighting, because they're all about fighting. Right. So when he says stop, and then like Picard calls him a coward, and he calls Worf a coward on the bridge. Jesus. And then he goes into this room and he starts, he's very defiant, and he's like he's like holding a weapon, and he's like ready to kill. And then when he has this moment where he's like, how much are we going to sacrifice to the Borg? We have to draw a line. And then she's like, blow up the damn ship. And then he throws his gun into the little glass cabinet and destroys his little ships. And he just has this and it's so unlike Picard, to have this outburst. Like, how did we get from the Picard of like the first season of Next Generation, who was kind of buttoned up and didn't show emotion, to the Picard of First Contact, where he's just filled with frustration and rage. And when I first saw it in the cinema, I remember being like, right, like the captain has lost his shit. But also that after it, he can recognize that he's gone too far, and he can recognize that actually he is turning into Captain Ahab. Yep. hunting a whale. So, and that's also the brilliant reference as well to Moby Dick as well. So,
no! I will not sacrifice the Enterprise. We've made too many compromises already, too many retreats. They invade our space, and we fall back. They assimilate entire worlds, and we fall back. Not again. The line must be drawn here. This far, no farther. And I will make them pay for what they've done.
Interesting to see how Captain Picard can evolve over the years. What's that related to right now? Interesting. I love this pick. I had not thought of this one because I wasn't thinking in terms of this type of moment. But this is a total WTF moment. In the theater, again, when you're watching this the first time, it was like, what? That's Captain Picard losing his cool there and almost in some ways acting hysterical at some level. So, wow, I love this pick. Duncan, what's your take on the line must be drawn here?
Obviously it goes without saying, an amazing moment. I think it's an amazing pick as well. I feel like First Contact, you could almost kind of subtitle the whole film WTF Picard. That's kind of what we're doing here in a way. And a lot of people, I think, at the time did have an issue with it. They felt this kind of sort of trauma and everything was kind of coming slightly out of left field, because we'd seen other episodes where he dealt with it in a much sort of quieter, smaller way. But I think it absolutely is what makes that film work. And it's a film that, funnily enough, I was kind of thinking about First Contact quite a bit. There are lots of moments in that film that I feel are kind of WTF moments one way or another. This one, for some reason, it didn't really occur to me. The stuff I was thinking of was, well, like Clara mentioned earlier, the population, however many billion, all Borg. That's a great kind of WTF moment. The dream at the very beginning, where he wakes up from one dream and then he's, the dream within a dream, and that thing, Borg thing coming out of his cheek. Amazing kind of body horror WTF moment. For me, watching First Contact in the cinema, much as I say, most of the plot I think I'd already absorbed one way or another before I went to see it. The bit that did shock me the most was Data, and trying to work out what was going on with Data and had he really switched sides or not. And I remember being really horrified in that scene where he says that he was tempted for 0.0 8 seconds or whatever. Yeah, exactly. And he says, and for an android, that was an eternity. And me going in my kind of, moralistic next gen fan way, was like, I can't believe Data was tempted for, almost an entire second. So for me, that was a real what the fuck. I didn't think that was possible. I didn't think that Data could even have contemplated it for a moment. But absolutely fantastic film and fantastic choice.
Amazing. I love this pick, and I love that it's another Brandon Braga episode. and we're going to close right now with another Brandon Braga episode, because my number one, I love that it hasn't come up yet at this point, but it's the all-time WTF episode in the history of Star Trek. 5 words and a hashtag. Hope that's a paper straw. Hashtag WTF Nightmares. And of course, it's TNG's Phantasms, Season 7, Episode 6, and my choice. And there's so many choices in this episode for WTF moments, but my pick is Beverly sucking a straw out of Riker's head in the most Lynchian, bizarro world scene in the history of Trek, at least on my list. So you can pick anything from this episode, but man, and by the way, I did pick the disgusting interphasic mouth creatures for our top 5 gory moments, because those creatures just freak me the fuck out. I hate them. But I just, again, like you obviously have all these weird dream images for Data, but I'll just never forget the moment when he turns around and Beverly is sucking a straw out of Riker's head, and he's sitting there with his chin on his fist saying, will you answer that? Because there's some ringing. Are you going to answer that? Is somebody going to answer that? It's just bonkers. The whole thing is bonkers. It's another Brandon Braga script, actually directed by Patrick Stewart. So, what's your take on this one, Clara?
I mean, isn't this the episode where Deanna is a cake?
Yes, she's also Deanna is a cake. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which every time I see that, it's wrong, but it does look kind of delicious.
Oh, yes.
I'm nice thick cake, good icing in there. Like, I could eat that.
It's cellular peptide with mint frosting. I mean, it's pretty good.
This is a really weird episode. I'd actually forgotten about this, but this is definitely a great, like, what the fuck moment. Yeah, this is a really weird episode. And you're right about, like, the straw scene is, like, something that I think you would see in something like a David Lynch film.
It's literally, that's the most David Lynchian moment. It's just
it's just truly bizarre.
Wow. Who thought of this? Oh, right. It was Brandon Braga. Duncan, what's your take on this one?
Yeah, it's absolutely a very freaky moment, freaky episode. And I suppose it's strange, isn't it? We tend to, as I say, think of Next Gen as this kind of quite the safest of the Star Treks in some ways. But Next Gen could go pretty weird. It could go pretty dark. It could go pretty freaky one way or another. I mean, another one that was on my kind of longer list was Schisms, just for that scene, the scene with the table, Schisms, which, even just thinking about it, I get, I'm getting tingles going down my arms. That kind of, it's surprising how much that kind of quite clean, quite kind of safe, quite well lit show could really go kind of chilling and weird and disturbing when it wanted to. And I think this is another example of Next Gen going weird.
I'm pretty sure that's another Brandon Braga script. And let's get into our secondary systems now, because Schisms is a good place to start. Because my WTF moment in Schisms is when she kind of says, "Oh yeah, your arm has been severed and reattached." I'm like, "What?
Yeah,
what the hell is happening?" So, Duncan, any other secondary systems picks for you?
I've got hundreds of them. I mean, this is why I had to be kind of strict with myself.
Let's go fast.
Okay, a recent one that I loved was Leafy for the kind of the reveal of what had been going on with Sarek and Spock. That was just, again, like absolute kind of jaw on the floor moment.
Yep. By the way, that's a Joe Menosky script, and we'll be mentioning him. We'll be mentioning him because he's right there with Braga in terms of WTF.
I can imagine, and kind of birds of a feather in a way. The pipe cleaner aliens in Catspore, I think that's a kind of real what the fuck moment.
That's my horror moment. Oh no, those live in my nightmares. Those creatures. Oh.
But it's the fact that we just get them right at the end, and so it's kind
brilliant.
of
brilliant.
It's such a weird. I mean, it's a weird episode. It's such a weird kind of moment to end on. Some that I quite enjoyed, the Magics of Megas 2, Satan on Star Trek. Really, amazing, like left field choice. I had a whole load that were basically, and a lot of them from DS9 that were basically like, Bashir's genetically modified. Bashir's a changeling. And those 2 episodes literally back to back. So like, who the fuck is Bashir? Eddington's a Maquis. Cisco's a god. Everyone is something that you weren't expecting to be. These kind of big twists, these kind of big reveals. Far Beyond the Stars, I think, is on one level you could say it's a kind of what the fuck episode, and the way that it plays out with a lot of kind of mystery as to what's going on, and those kind of moments where the 2 worlds are sort of bleeding into each other. It kind of plays very much on, for Cisco and for Benny Russell, that kind of what the fuck experience one way or another. Really kind of effective. A more kind of serious one that I actually nearly put on my list was Children of Time, that revelation that Odo from the future is willing to kill all those people. And I think Odo is one of the most fascinating characters in DS9. And one of the things that's fascinating about him is that his ethics are slightly off. Do you know what I mean? You get that in the kind of occupation arc as well, where he's, you suddenly think, wow, we thought we knew this guy and we do love this character, but sometimes he does things and we're a bit like, what the fuck? So I just think that was a really interesting sort of knotty kind of powerful moment that they played there.
And more than willing to do it, he actually did do it.
Yeah, exactly.
Crazy. That's I love those picks.
Really kind of dark moment. And a few from Voyager. Deadlock, fantastic episode, one of the best Voyager episodes, I think. And that kind of sense of like, the crew being killed and then swapped over from the other ship, and the fact that we kind of end up with the ship that we somehow don't think is the one that we started with somemew. Great twist in Brandon Braga. Needle. Brandon Braga again. Yeah. Twist at the end of Eye of the Needle. It's in the past. I love that. I think that's a really effective twist there. Distant Origin. We've got dinosaurs leaving the Earth. I mean, we're talking about lizard babies.
Oh, that's a great pick.
Kind of go there.
I didn't think of Distant Origin, but literally Distant Origin's story is that dinosaurs evolved and built spaceships on Earth and left. So.
And that's
Star Trek's history. Again, for all the nitpickers out there, that's Star Trek's history, is that dinosaurs built spaceships and left. So,
and this is not even like a cheesy, silly episode. This is like quite a serious,
exactly, and it's a beloved,
emotional episode.
Beloved episode.
Yeah.
Great point.
Yeah.
Okay, Clara, how about you? Any secondary systems picks?
So Quark changing sex.
Oh yes, thank you.
And he doesn't just like, he actually surgically is altered to be female.
Less said about Prophet and Lace, the better.
The destruction of Vulcan in the first Star Trek movie, Star Trek Kelvin Timeline movie. Yeah, that really hit me hard. I was like, no, Vulcan. Any scene where the Enterprise is fully destroyed. So like the search for Spock. Most recently in Star Trek Beyond, that really got me as well. I actually had tears in my eyes when that happened. Star Trek Generations, I know it's not completely destroyed, but it's like a home. It's the home for our characters, and the idea of your home being blown up and being marooned is horrifying.
And even like the fake out, like say cause and effect. You get to all those episodes where you get to see the ship being blown up and then unblown up again.
It's just horrifying, isn't it? Because we are on the ship with the crew. That's like where we go every week. So it's just horrible. Beverly having sex with a ghost in Sub Rosa. I could have gone the rest of my life never seeing that, to be honest.
Brandon Braga, by the way.
The song,
and you did see it. We did see it.
I've seen it more than once.
Exactly.
Unfortunately, the song in "Move Along Home," when they're doing that.
Alan Moraine.
Yeah, I could have gone the rest of my life without saying that too. At the time when I first saw it, was Spock's death in The Wrath of Khan. I didn't see that coming when I was a kid, and that was a real what the f*** moment for me. Although I probably wouldn't have said what the f*** when I was about 8 years old. But, and the last one I would say is Cyborg, Kirk, and McCoy and Spock meeting God in The Final Frontier. Yeah. I mean, what can we say except what the fuck,
Well, my WTF for that isn't meeting God, because obviously it's not God. It's the fact that they we're actually on a journey to meet God. Like that.
But they think it could be God. That they entertain the possibility.
Exactly. That's what
scientists.
That's what I meant to say. Yeah, no, that's my least favorite 2 hours of Trek, but we don't talk about that on Trek Rank. So let me rattle off a few more, and then we'll summarize our picks. My toughest cut was, I can't believe it hasn't come up yet, is from the episode Masks. This is a Joe Menosky script. Is Masaka is waking. And yeah, that's crazy. I had the speaking of cold opens, because one of your picks, Duncan, was that Scorpion cold open. I had Impulse cold open with T'Pol as basically as a zombie freaking out that was another really short one. I had the pile of Borg corpses in Scorpion. That was a WTF moment for me. From the episode of Voyager Revulsion, these are all more horror ones, but when the hologram Dejarin grabs B'Elanna's heart through her chest and is like basically killing her by grabbing her heart. Oh, that freaked me out. That was a WTF moment. And then the Thaw, when they beheaded that guy in the Thaw, which has a ton of WTF moments as well. That was on my list. And then I have two special shout outs to historical figures in Star Trek from the 37s. Amelia Earhart. Yes, they found her. She is alive and well in the Delta Quadrant. And yes, that is Abraham Lincoln flying toward you in space in the Savage Curtain. Another great WTF moment way out there. I love it. All right. What the fuck with all these picks? I knew this was going to be a crazy topic. So let's get into our regeneration cycle now and recap our picks and go through some stats.
Computer, activate regeneration cycle. Alcoves beta and gamma.
All right, Duncan, give us a summary of your top five.
Okay, so at number 5, we had Star Trek Picard, Season 1, Episode 2, Maps and Legends, and the encounter between Picard and the sweary Admiral Clancy. At number 4, I had Voyager, Season 3, Episode 26, Scorpion, Part 1, that amazing cold open with the Borg cubes just blasted to pieces. Number 3, I had Deep Space Nine, Season 8, Episode 1, as featured in the DS9 documentary, and the shock death of Nog, which we discovered in the documentary, it clearly should have been O'Brien. Number 2, I had Voyager, Season 1, Episode 13, Faces, and that horrific moment where the Vidian comes in basically wearing the face of one of the Starfleet crewmen. Kind of best red shirt death, I think. Probably in Star Trek as well, by the way. And at number 1, I had this moment that for me was quite kind of personally very memorable because it was one of the things that made me fall in love with Star Trek. Next Generation, Season 6, Episode 12, Ship in the Bottle. And it was the moment when Data realizes that they're still in the holodeck.
All right, so you spread it around. This is a great list. You had one each from Deep Space Nine, TNG, and Star Trek Picard, and 2 from Voyager. I love it. Clara, how about you? Break down your 5.
At number 5, I have Chakotay starts the date 7 of 9 in Voyager Season 7, Episodes 25 and 26. Endgame. At number 2, I had Cisco deleting his incriminating captain's log, and that's DS9 Season 6, Episode 19 in the Pale Moonlight. At number 3, I had a dwarf riding Captain Kirk, who is like acting like a horse. It's horrifying. In the original series, Season 3, Episode 10, episode Plato's Stepchildren. And number 2 is Ash Tyler snaps Culber's neck in Star Trek Discovery, Season 1, Episode 10. And number 1 was Picard's furious outburst in First Contact in the movie. And it's basically saying that the line must be drawn here.
Amazing. So you did the I need Twitter to send me a name for what we're going to call this when someone has 5 different incarnations of Trek across their picks. So you had one each from TOS, TNG, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, and Discovery. And my 5 picks, number 5 was from Voyager episode Threshold, the lizard babies, the infamous lizard babies. A number 4 pick from the original series, Wolf in the Fold, and it was when Piglet is resurrected after dying with Jack the Ripper. Less said, the better. Sorry. I apologize for even picking that one. Number 3, my super round pick was from TNG Genesis, Deanna's amphibian transformation. My number 2 WTF moment was Enterprise, A Night in Sickbay, Archer's apology to the Cretaceans. And my number 1 WTF moment from TNG, Phantasms, and it was Beverly sucking a straw out of Riker's head. Yes, you heard me right. That actually happened. Okay, so here's our statistical breakdown. This is great. We had every single live action Trek series represented in our 15 picks. There was no Kelvin Timeline pick, but we did have 1 pick each from Enterprise, Discovery, and Picard. That's super cool. We had 2 picks each from TOS and Deep Space Nine, and leading the way with 4 picks was TNG and Voyager. A lot of Brandon Braga with TNG and Voyager, and I did keep a tab. So we had only 1 Joe Menosky pick, but we had 7 Brandon Braga episodes represented. Wow. That is absolutely amazing. And then also we had 1 actual fuck in our WTFs, thanks to Duncan's awesome Picard pick. I love that. Okay. As always,
I think you were talking about Beverly and the candle in Clara's secondary system.
That would be another one, but yeah. Okay, as always, we've entered a temporal causality loop. So before we can depart, it's time to hear from you.
Enterprise has been caught up in a temporal causality loop, and I suspect that something similar may have happened to you.
And for this week's temporal causality loop, we're going all the way back to episode 54 and our 5-episode marathons for a rainy day, which was really fun episode that we did. We got a voicemail from Brian Yates, who is on Twitter at history_Trek. He sent in a quick list with a full 5 words and a hashtag, and I would watch this marathon any day of the week, rainy or not. So I'm going to play that for you right now.
Hi, this is Brian Yates. You can find me on Twitter at history_Trek. These are my top 5 ranks for rainy day marathon. Number 5 words, Data learns how to gamble, hashtag Hotel California, TNG episode The Royale. Number 4, crew faces boredom and swarms, hashtag Sabotage, and it's Star Trek Beyond. Number 3, battling intruders during neutronic storm, hashtag Cabin Fever, Enterprise Catwalk. Number 2, Paris uses 20th century knowledge, hashtag Divine Intervention, Voyager, Futures End 1 and 2. And number 1, tensions rise on K7 twice, hashtag Quattro Triachili. The episode is The Trouble with Tribbles and Trials and Tribulations.
All right, I love that list from Brian because A, he included the Royale, which is amazing. And B, his 5-episode rainy day marathon includes 8 hours of Trek. And as you know, we love that kind of rule breaking on Trek Ranks. The more Trek, the better. And then one more awesome list I just want to relay to everyone. It was from the great Twitter account at Trek Reexamine. And they sent in this amazing list of top 5 Borg episodes from Trek Ranks episode 72. Which was the first of our 3 shows previewing the Picard series. And I wanted to read off that list because it's super good. So he's got 5 words and a hashtag. Number 5 from Voyager, drone, futile Borg saves the day, hashtag you will adapt. Number 4 was TNG Q Who, it's not safe out here, hashtag terrors to freeze your soul. His number 3 was from TNG Borg. Picard faces ultimate moral test. Hashtag resistance is not futile. Oh, Hugh. Number 2 from TNG, the best of both worlds. We have engaged the Borg. Hashtag your life as it has been is over. I'm loving this list. These 5 words and hashtags are awesome. And his number 1, we just talked about it, Star Trek First Contact. The line must be drawn. Hashtag assimilate this. Fantastic list. Really, really cool. So once again, more than enough to get us out of this week's temporal causality loop. So as always, I want to thank everyone for sending in all your great picks to the TrekRanks podcast. Keep your list coming to me at TrekRanks, so we can retweet them on Twitter, but we also want to hear from you. So put together your own list of top 5 WTF moments or any list from our past shows. Give us a call at the Tricorder Transmissions at 609-512-5527. That's 609-512-LLAP, or just record your own picks and DM me. That works too. Hopefully we'll hear from you so you can be featured on the next episode of Trek Ranks. And on the next episode of Trek Ranks, we've got a really interesting, kind of different topic. We're going to be doing our top 5 episodes where the ship is a character, or a station, or a shuttle, or however you want to define that. So Duncan and Clara, if you, off the top of your head, had to choose one episode where you thought the ship was a character for your list, what's jumping into your head? Anything, Duncan? What do you got?
Well, this might be a little bit of a cheat, but the first thing that came into my head when you said that was that amazing speech from Janeway in Year of Hell, where she talked about Voyager and she says it's nurtured, it's carried us, it's nurtured us, and it needs one of us, that kind of moment. And that sense of certainly the way that the captain sees the ship as a character, the captain and the ship having this almost kind of symbiotic bond. And I suppose you could say, in a sense, in Year of Hell more generally, we see Voyager get kind of ripped to pieces one way or another, and there's a real kind of pathos, as much as there is for the actual crew, in just seeing the damage that ship takes, and yet kind of keeps on going one way or another.
Spoiler alert, Year of Hell is definitely on my short list for potential picks in that episode. I love that pick. Clara, how about you? Anything jumping out at you?
Well, 2 things, actually. I think in 2 movies, actually probably more than 2, actually, but in 2 specific movies, the ship becomes a character. Like in Star Trek Beyond, the ship is definitely a character, because it's actually, I would say, like when they say, when it gets destroyed and it's that line, like cut it off at the neck.
Right.
And then also at the very end of that film, when the ship is being built again and the crew get together and they're like watching the ship being built, like speeded up with the sort of like, to go where no one has gone before, is being said over the footage. I think it's like the ship it's been taken to sick bay and it's being repaired. Do you know what I mean? Like, as in, there's a lot of shots of the ship, the exterior of the ship, the interior of the ship, and then the voyage home. I mean, it's not the Enterprise, but the voyage home, the ship is definitely a character, because you see people bumping into it and everything. Like, I just feel like this, like, it's just this little Klingon ship is, this plucky little Klingon ship is going to save the whales.
Clara, get out of my head. Both of those picks are also on my short list as potential for inclusion in our next episode of Trek Ranks. I can't imagine. I'm so shocked that you picked Beyond, because I had been thinking that as a super deep cut pick. So super cool. I love it.
Clara picking Beyond there, of course, also made me think of the motion picture, because there's the film where you're talking about like the shot going round and so on. Because in that film, I think when you watch it, I mean, aside from the fact that scene is so ridiculously long and overblown and so on, I don't know what you're talking about. The way, okay, we won't go there. But the way the script is structured, it's like you introduce each of the characters one at a time. So we have to introduce Kirk. What's Kirk been up to? We have to introduce Spock. What's Spock been up to? We have to kind of get Bones on board. Someone like every character gets their character introduction. Yep. And then the Enterprise gets the biggest character introduction of all, because it gets this kind of huge, sweeping, little kind of mini sort of operatic moment, basically. It's absolutely like basically saying, you're kind of interested in Kirk and Spock and all these guys, but this is the character that you really came to the cinema to see.
Well, and there's another ship in that episode that is definitely a character named Voyager. So that's another possibility.
Good point.
All right. So before we wrap it up, a huge thanks to Duncan Barrett and Clara Cook. Great to have you guys on the show. Any final Trek subspace communications you guys want to relay before we depart, Duncan?
Well, it just occurred to me as we were talking, how long is it going to be before we get an actual what the fuck on Star Trek. Now that swearing is kind of, is allowed, now that the censorship has kind of been dropped. And there was this interesting discussion this week. Michael Chabon was sort of saying, you do understand the reason we didn't have swearing on Star Trek before is not because people don't swear in the future, it's because they weren't allowed to show it on TV. Now that those kind of restrictions are lifted, it's surely only a matter of time before we get our first
actual WTF.
Genuine what the fuck line. Yeah.
And I like that he added to that, I don't want to. You're describing a dystopian future when you describe a world where nobody swears, and he's right.
Yeah,
he's right. That's the guy's genius. Clara, hope you had fun.
I did have a lot of fun, and I'm really interested to hear what the audience of this podcast thinks, what their favorite what the fuck moments are. I would like people tweet it, talk about it. We want all the moments, because everyone's got a different one, really.
Exactly. I can't wait to get these listed on Twitter. Everyone's gonna be all over the place with their Prime Directives. All right, great job, guys. Okay, but we're not done yet. I teased this a little bit earlier in the show, and we got a little bit of TrekRanks bonus content for you guys right now. So this episode, obviously, WTF Moments, has obviously been a really fun one, but we literally recorded the show just a couple of days before the shocking Star Trek Picard episode, Stardust City Rag. And, at this point, I think most of you have seen that show. You know exactly why I'm speaking to you about this right now, because I could not, in good conscience, release this episode just a week after that show dropped and not have a reference to the amazing WTF surprise appearance and then brutal killing of Icheb, which all took place in the first 90 seconds of that show. Oh my God. All-time WTF moment for sure. So we're going to talk about that moment in a second, but what I wanted to do was have a little bit of a celebration of Icheb, our favorite Delta Quadrant Brunali. And we're going to do that with our first ever TrekRanks Slipstream Round. We're just going to quickly go through our top 3 Icheb moments right now. To do that, I've gone to our emergency cryo chambers, and we've got a couple of TrekRanks regulars joining us. We've got Alex Perry and Jen Tiff on the show. Alex and Jen, are you guys ready to do this?
Jolan True Koat Malat.
Oh, man. That is current. I like it. Jen, you there?
Yeah, so glad to get a chance to talk about Icheb after.
Yes, Jen, I know
definitely WTF.
Let's start there, because I know that Jen is a big Icheb fan.
Huge.
So how you doing, Jen?
I'm okay now. If you'd asked me that right after I saw the scene, I was a wreck. I pretty much missed the rest of the episode.
Yeah,
I was bawling. Yeah, so I had to watch the episode again and to catch the rest of the plot, because that was all I could.
Yeah, it's an interesting episode that is definitely, it helps when we all watch more than once, obviously, but no one's listening to this podcast that just watches one time, I think. But that second and third viewing really helps with this episode. How about you, Alex? What was your take on the death of Icheb?
What a shocking way to start the episode. It certainly very quickly kind of sets the scene for the 7 of 9 that we meet later in the episode. So it was, it was extremely effective in that it was so brutal.
One might even say a WTF moment.
One might say that, yes.
Yes. And by the way, we can say what the f***, because I've been beeping it out throughout this entire episode. So.
Oh, good.
Okay, well, let's do this really quick, because we're adding this content at the end of the episode. So let's talk about our top 3 Icheb moments really quick. Quick celebration of Icheb. Alex, what's we're not going to do Prime Directives and everything, but tell us kind of how you came up with your list, and then give us your number 3 pick.
Honestly, it was the first. There were sort of 3 quite powerful moments that popped into my head, and that's what I went with. So my 3rd pick is a 5-word summary: Punishment Protocol 9 Alpha. # fun will now commence. This is the moment from Ashes to Ashes, season 6, episode 18, where 7 of 9 has rigidly scheduled the Borg children's. This is, I think, one of the first episodes that they had been on the show since they joined the crew, and Seven's sort of learning to become a mother figure to them. And she is instructing two of the kids to basically punish themselves, and Icheb sort of steps in a little bit and ends the situation. And it was one of those moments that I thought, he was sort of their leader. And of course, Seven took care of them, but he was the one who really, I felt like, mostly took care of them and understood them much better than she did, and sort of served as that bridge between her and them, since he was sort of halfway between them in terms of age.
You will initiate Punishment Program 9 Alpha.
And they go and stand in a corner.
I actually picked that for my comedy, my comedic character moments as a reference to Seven, because I love that moment, and I love when he knocks all the chips on the floor, and just the fact that they're all sitting around playing games. Jen, ashes to ashes, Icheb blowing up the game because he's mad at Seven.
Right. So he has, it's a very childish moment because, like you said, he knocks the stuff onto the floor, but he's also like Alex said, being the leader, he's standing up for the kids who got punished, and I will not activate that punishment protocol and let her know. It isn't afraid to let Seven know that that they weren't gonna be having this, and it's a really funny moment.
I love it. Good start. All right, Jen, how about you? Tell us a little bit about your Prime Directive, and then give us your number 3 pick.
Okay, so like you mentioned, I'm a really, really big fan of Icheb. He's such a pure soul, and so when I know this is just a mini character episode, but usually when you do a character episode, you ask everyone to come up with the one word that describes that character.
Oh, right.
And the one word for Icheb is definitely selfless.
That is awesome.
Everything that character has ever done has been to help others.
Yeah.
And that's why I love him so much. And even in his death, he was he had taken leave from Starfleet, his job where he helps people, to help the Rangers,
right?
In the lawless neutral zone, and he was helping people while when he got captured, and just his whole life.
That's a great word.
He's been selfless. So I'm
glad you did that. That's awesome. All right, well, what's your number 3 pick?
Okay. All right. I apologize for this ahead of time, but my 5 words and hashtag are Delta Quadrant's finest turd polisher. Hashtag playing the hand he's dealt. This is from season 6, episode 19, Child's Play. And the moment I picked is his choice to study genetics at the very end. Yep. He goes through this episode. This is very tough competition, but he probably has the worst parents in all of Star Trek.
He just might. They're
in the conversation. And he goes through this is the episode where, they find his parents. He leaves. They uncover the plot of Icheb being genetically altered to as with like a pathogen that can affect, it could kill Borg, and that's what he was born and bred to do. And they give him back to these people, and they do it again. And then when they figure it out, they save him, and he goes on. But imagine having to live with that knowledge that that's what your parents did to you. But at the end, he takes something good from that, something good from his horrible, heritage. The fact that he has a knack for genetics, his family, his species and his family have this talent, and he decides to go with that. And I think that's a really brave thing to do. I would probably not want to study genetics ever if that happens to me, Right. And that continues to resonate. From that point on, in other episodes, they use his knowledge of genetics in various plots. They reference that several times. So it's something that he kept up, and something that he took something horrible and used it to improve himself. And I just love that.
That's an awesome pick. And even in that moment at the end, he was like, he was defending his parents. at the end of that episode, he was like defending him and kind of seeing the reasons they would do something like that. It's so horrible. Awesome pick. Alex, quick take on the Child's Play and the Ichib's choice at the end there.
Yeah, that's a great pick. It's actually a sneaky good episode, I think. It's surprisingly well executed. The twist is one that I'm always surprised by how well it works. I mean, it's such a gutting reveal, both for the character and for the crew, but, he makes something significant of it, which is, a credit to the character.
Yep, agreed. Okay, I'm going to do mine really quick because I've done it a million times on this show already. It's popped up like 3 or 4 times in the last year. And so really quick, 5 words and a hashtag. The technical details don't matter. Hashtag Ichib nitpicks Neelix. I had to pick this. It's the haunting of Deck 12. It's that really quick scene. A couple of them where Ichib is kind of the stand-in. The writers are using him as a stand-in for nitpicking fans who are, as he's nitpicking Neelix's story in that awesome episode. So just your quick take on that one, guys. But keep it quick because I've picked this way too many times. Alex.
I mean, this is your entire ethos for Star Trek.
It really is. It really is. Jen, any quick comment on that one?
Oh yeah, I mean it's super funny and it's it's a nice burn on nitpickers. But he also does one of those little scenes he does. Ichib says, "Oh, I wonder what they ate after they ran out of rations." And that kind of nitpicking is kind of fun because then they start having this discussion, about what they did, trying to like an in-universe explanation for it, which is always fun too. That's the kind of thing I like to do is find an in-universe explanation for the things that don't make sense. So, yeah, that's a great episode.
The Bizarro collectors don't produce nitty on emissions.
Well, the technical details don't matter.
The Bussard collectors don't produce nitty on emissions. All right. Round two. Alex, what do you got?
5-word summary: extending the hand of friendship. Hashtag piloting lessons with Paris. This is Voyager Season 7, Episode 19, Q2.
I love it.
And the specific moment I picked was when Ichib invites Junior to come along with him on a shuttle piloting expedition with Paris. And the reason I picked it was because, Junior was exceptionally mean to Ichib throughout the episode, but Ichib never stopped sort of seeing the good in the young Q and was just, sort of very persistently nice to him, at least through most of the episode. And ultimately, was a huge factor in Junior deciding to mature a little bit, which was sort of the overall kind of driving force of the episode as a whole. The other fun thing about the episode is Ichib sort of plays a straight man to Junior, which leads to a number of funny moments throughout the episode.
Old Itchy and Cue Ball.
That's it exactly.
That's a
I want
great
a short
moment.
track. The Adventures of Itchy and Cue Ball.
That would be awesome. Jen,
them grown up.
What's your take on this one, Jen?
Oh yeah, I love this episode. I love their friendship because it is a little bit of an odd couple, but you can kind of see two brilliant minds getting together, and you can see that they would have some fun adventures. But you're right, as far as Ichib goes in this episode, he doesn't give up even when he Q makes fun of him for liking Captain Kirk, and then he tricks him into doing his essay for him.
Yeah.
And Ichib still, invites him to learn how to fly with him, and it's a fun episode and a fun friendship.
I love it because it's one of the main times that you see Ichib happy. He's always he's got a little sly. He likes having Junior Q around. So
yeah.
Okay, Jen, what's your number 2 pick?
My number 2 pick: a Star Trek worthy speech. Hashtag Starfleet material. And this is Season 7, Episode 2, Imperfection. This episode in general is Ichib's finest hour to me. But the moment I picked in particular is when he gives his speech at the end after he's disengaged his cortical node. So, they have no choice but to to use it or they're both going to die, he makes the choice for them.
Is the speech something like my 5 words in a hashtag? That's what you do here. Hashtag you help each other. My number 2 pick is the exact same moment.
Well, guys, Jen. You know what's really funny is that since after that comes my number 1 pick.
Awesome.
It is 5-word summary. Saves his adopted mother's life. Hashtag crying.
Oh God! All right, keep going, Jen, because the speech is the best part about it. Yeah,
but it is. It's just that good of a moment. It's that classic of a Star Trek moment. But particularly his speech of Starfleet risked their lives to save others, and that's what he's doing here. But also the reverse of that, telling Seven, relying on people is okay. We help each other. That's what we do. It's a powerful moment because he's pretty much dying while he's giving this speech, and and he lives those ideals, and every time we see each other, he lives what he's saying, and he helped, he saved Seven's life, and it's kind of a sad. Rewatching it, I rewatched it. I shouldn't have because I just started bawling. but it's kind of a sad parallel with what happened this week, because she helps him, at the end in a way, and that's what we do for each other. And I love that moment. But it's even better now. It was even, a little bit. I'm sorry. I'm done.
I love that I love how he flips it on Seven when she's saying you're too reliant on others.
Because she's like, you only want to save me because you rely on me,
right? And then he's like, he's like, well, you actually need to rely on people better because look at all the things that you're putting yourself through. You need to learn how to rely on people. So yeah, it was a good, awesome moment, incredible episode. Alex, why'd you pick it?
For exactly the same reason, I think. For me, it was specifically because of the parallel with this week's episode. Mm-hmm. That, somewhat tragically, she was sort of returning the favor at the end of the teaser by, helping him out of a really tough situation. And it's one of those things that Star Trek does really well, which is builds on earlier stories in ways that make those earlier stories more powerful and more meaningful in the process.
Yeah, that's perfect. I love it. All right, well then we're rolling right along. So Jen, we're going back to you with your number 1 pick now. We've started our round 1. We've had a triplicate, 3 in a row for imperfection. So what is your number 1 pick?
Okay. 5 words and a hashtag. All-time best secret keeper. Hashtag keeping the home plasma fires burning. This is season 7, episode 11, Shattered.
Oh, yes. And I love that when I forget that I know that's going to be one of your picks. Yeah. I'm surprised.
Well, yeah, Jim likes to tease me about this because I think when you did your, was it hottest characters?
Yes, you
were teasing me because I picked Future Ichab.
Future Ichab.
One of my hottest characters. But he is. I mean, not just, and I mean, physically, he's one of the hottest to me. That's just my type. But besides that, that's not why he's one of the hottest characters. And that's not why I picked that here. But I picked him here in particular because think about everything we know about this version of Ichab. We don't get to see very much of him, but we know, but when last we saw Ichab in the regular time, he was saying, I'm done with astrometrics. I want to do something else. I want to move on. I'm ready to move on and learn new things and try new things. And here you see him still in astrometrics, still, doing what he can, keeping the ship running. That he stepped up when Janeway and Chakotay and everyone, basically died, and he took over. And he's been doing that. Him and Naomi have been doing that for the last 17 years. And I'm really interested. I would really be interested to see what what that was like, the ship's in good hands. And you can tell, but the particular moment I love it so much when they return back to what happened in the beginning, where in the beginning you see younger Icheb and he catches Chakotay getting his booze that he's hiding, and because he doesn't want Neelix to get it. He's like, don't tell anyone where I had my booze. And 17 years later, you know that conversation was something that Icheb kept close to him, because 17 years later he gets the chance to tell Chakotay that I never told Neelix where you hid that cider. I never, I kept your secret. And I don't know. Icheb's just such a good guy. I just everything about that scene. It just kind of defines everything about him. You could see that's the man he would grow into.
Amazing.
I just love that.
It's the portrayal in Shattered is really, really clever and a great extension of Naomi and Icheb. Alex, what's your take on?
Yeah, shout out to Naomi, future Naomi too, because she's so cool.
She's cool too.
Great episode. This is actually one of my probably top Voyager comfort food episodes, because it's such a fun exploration of the show's entire 7-season run. It's sort of a stealth celebration of the show in the waning days of the series itself, and that moment's a really fun one, right? You're only sort of glimpse into the future and seeing this future Icheb. It's really, really good.
All right, I'm resisting the urge of blaming future Admiral Janeway for now that Icheb's dead.
I
she
know.
hadn't messed everything up, he'd still be alive on Voyager.
Well, and that's like he's older. Yes, in this alternate future, it's the same way. Whenever I see older Jadzia in Visitor, it's like no, that's how it should be here with gray hair.
All right, let's close it out with my number one pick, and it's a duplicate episode, but not a duplicate moment. Mine's at the front end of the episode as opposed to the back end. My 5 words in a hashtag: why Icheb's death is game-changing. Hashtag that's good news. And the episode is Child's Play. And Jen picked the end of this episode with Icheb's decision. And my moment is the opening teaser of this. I implore everybody to go back and rewatch it with the knowledge of what we saw in Stardust City Rag. And the moment is when it's really... It's not Icheb, it's Seven. When Seven finds out that they found his parents, and Janeway tells her this, that he's probably going to be leaving the ship, and they zero in on Seven, and holy crap, it's staggering. You can see in everything Jerry Ryan does in that moment how important Icheb is to her, and that tells you everything you need to know about Stardust City Rag and the choices that she made there in trying to revenge him. It's a moment that now when you see it, it's completely changed because of what's happened in Star Trek Picard. And when I rewatched it a couple of days ago, man, it hit me hard, that opening moment. And yeah, Icheb's parents are a bunch of animals. So Jen, what's your take on this one?
Yeah, so Icheb has the worst parents in Star Trek, and also one of the best parents in Star Trek, right?
Oh, right, yeah.
Seven. And this, and you're right, that moment just hits you because she, and you know how Seven controls her emotions, but you can see the way Jerry Ryan does, acts in that scene. The nonverbal acting in that scene. You could see that Janeway's news just hit her with a ton of bricks.
Yeah, my hashtag was that's good news, which is what she says. She says that's good news, and it's anything but to her.
And it's a really nice contrast with right before that, Seven having a proud parent moment with Icheb. Right. He's doing he's showing them that his science experiment, and she says the best compliment that Seven would know how to give. She says, the engineering principles are sound. She says that proudly to Janeway and B'Elanna.
That's a great.
She has that motherly moment right before she finds out. Oh, what a great pick!
Alex, your take on this opening tease from Child's Play?
Same as Imperfection, just makes it all the more powerful and meaningful in the process.
Yeah, just absolute gut punch. Everyone should go back and watch Child's Play. Alex said it. It is an absolute sneaky good classic episode. Okay, any quick secondary systems picks from you guys that we haven't already talked about? Alex?
I just had The Haunting of Deck 12 because you've burned it into my mind.
Of course. Jen?
A couple quick ones. Actually, from that same scene that you were just talking about, the fact even that his science project is a sensor array to help them detect wormholes.
Yep.
Even in his science project, he's thinking of ways to help other people, help his collective. And it's just so Icheb. From the very first episode, we meet him, collective. He stands up to, the other Borg drone child who's made himself the leader. He does it to protect Seven. So the very first time we see them, Seven helps him and fixes his vocal processor, and Icheb helps Seven by stopping the first from attacking her. And it's a really nice introduction to what their relationship's going to be.
Love it.
And then I have just one more funny one. Funny one is when from Human Error, when he's going through all the Starfleet introductory classes, and one of them is Earth literature. So he starts using all these Earth sayings and phrases. He says, "Don't kill the messenger."
Oh, that's right. All the quotes.
And then he's like, "Better late than never." He looks like such a dork, and so proud of himself using these colloquialisms. And
every time he says it, he says where it was originated, where it came from. Yeah, that's awesome. All right, my only other one, we mentioned it briefly, but I'll highlight it again, was his book report on James T. Kirk is just awesome. That opens the episode Q2, and it's really freaking awesome. Icheb going into details on Jim Kirk. All right, we're not going to recap, but we'll just close our celebration of Icheb. He was in 11 episodes, now 12 technically. We had 3 choices for Imperfection and 2 for Child's Play. And then we also had Ashes to Ashes, Q2, and Shattered and The Haunting of Deck 12 mentioned here. All right, guys, thanks for coming on really quick. Going to keep it nice and tight and get out of this episode of Trek Ranks. I want to thank everyone again for engaging with us here on episode 77 of the Trek Ranks podcast. As always, I want to close by saying I'm looking forward to standing with you again here in this place where I belong.
Excuse me, Mr. Worf. Aren't you going to answer that, Mr. Data?
Sir?
That damn ringing. Answer it, will you?
Yes, sir.
Just want to remind everyone again that the entire Trek Ranks catalog is available for you to download and listen to at TrekRanks.com and on your podcast player of choice. Our episodes never get carbon dated, so check out the topics you've missed and maybe just want to listen to again over at TrekRanks.com. And a reminder to check out our friends 5-Year Mission at 5yearmission.net. They're writing a song for every episode of Star Trek, and you won't believe how great their music is. They also have a podcast at the Trek Geeks Network, so seek them out. You won't regret it.
Check your scans. You'll see I'm already adapting.
Some of your implants have adapted, but not all.
Then apply the resequencing technique I researched.
This debate is pointless. I won't accept the node.
And I won't keep it.
Someone had better use the damn thing. If it stays disconnected much longer, it won't do either of you any good.
You're acting like a child.
I'm trying to save your life.
Only because you've grown too dependent on me.
So you think I need to learn to rely on other people?
Yes.
What about you? You've refused to rely on a single member of this crew. You hid your condition from the rest of us. You deactivated the doctor, and now you're rejecting my help. You're the one who needs to rely on others. Isn't that what people on this ship do? They help each other?
Whenever we can.
If the captain were dying, you'd risk your life to save her, wouldn't you? And when you respond to a distress call, you're risking the life of everyone on this ship to respond to the aid of strangers.
He's right.
Captain, he's just a child.
I don't think he is. Not anymore.
Doctor!
Don't look at me. Please, just let us help you.